we'll have Will Heller give us a presentation on this action item when you're ready.
Sure, I can definitely go ahead and hop on in. I did want to real quick, if you wanted to give a tax chair report or not.
So I believe we had some information from Plan RVA that the policy board made an update to their bylaws to include CVTA and the Port of Richmond Authority to be added to the TAC. So we will have Chet Parsons joining us on the TAC, and then I think they're trying to fill a vacancy at the port, the Richmond port, to see who's going to be joining us there. So we'll wait and see who that person will be.
Okay, perfect. Just wanted to make sure you had your moment to shine.
Yeah, that's all I had to report.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, wait, let me share my screen so y'all don't just listen to me talk. Okay. So thank you so much. The first item that I'm bringing to y'all today involves a request from DRPT, amendments to include FTA 5310 funding into selected projects. So, as I said, this amendment is being requested by DRPT and will update 5310 funding for all 9 projects. Of the projects, 8 are previously existing and 1 PCSS002 is the only new project. So these projects have been determined to be exempt from air quality conformity under the mass transit categories for operating assistance to transit agencies and for the purchase of new buses to replace existing vehicles or for minor expansions. Each of these projects are funded through a combination of local, state, and federal 5310 funding, with one caveat being that GRTC 060 also has a little bit of 5307 funding in addition to the 5310. So the 5310 program provides funding to assist local transit agencies, governments, and nonprofit groups in meeting the needs of seniors and people with disabilities. And the 5307 provides funding to states and local recipients for transit, capital, and operating assistance and transportation-related planning in urbanized areas. So these projects fall into one of the following 4 categories of eligible use. We have operating assistance, vehicle acquisition, mobility management, and then, of course, the capital cost of contracting. So due to the length of today's agenda, I'm not going to present tip blocks for all 9 of these projects. If you'd like to see the individual tip blocks or to have more of those individual project details, they're all included in your packet. So I'm just sort of going to give more of an overview of them. But so Let's Go Services and the Span Center each received 5310 funding for operating assistance, and the Chesterfield Community Service Board and Let's Go Services, Inc. also received 5310 funding to assist with acquiring new ADA accessible vehicles for their paratransit service. Chesterfield County and the Powhatan County Department of Social Services and Hanover County DASH are using their 5310 funding to assist with capital costs of contracting for the services across their areas. And finally, GRTC and the Span Center are using their funding to assist with mobility management practices. All 9 of these projects have at least an 88% state and federal funding, but a majority of the projects have 90% or more state and federal funding. So our request today is that the TAC recommend approval of the proposed TIP amendments as requested by DRPT. And if anyone has any questions, I would be happy to take them.
Thank you, Will. Hopefully everybody has been able to go over that information. Any questions or comments?
No questions. Great summary, Will. I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of the TIP amendments as presented.
Second.
JJ Wood.
That's Wood seconding.
Thank you for the motion to approve, and the second. We'll go ahead and do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Very well, the action is approved. We'll move on to item number 8, which is the TIP amendment VDOT request for UPC 50529. And this is an an action item that is for fiscal year 2024 through 2027. Heller will give us a presentation on that.
All right, so it is VDOT's turn, giving another TIP amendment. So as I said, this amendment is being requested by VDOT, and it will update funding for an existing 3 Chop Road widening project. So this project, UPC 50529, is part of a larger series of 3 Chop Road improvements. This particular portion will expand the existing stretch of 3 Chop Road between Cox Road and Gaskins Road, widening it to a 4-lane divided roadway. In addition to the road widening, the project also calls for pedestrian improvements in the form of new sidewalks, as well as intersection improvements at the intersection of Gaskin Roads and 3 Chop Road. There are also set asides for curb and gutter and drainage improvements. Since this project has previously been approved and is already included in the regional conformity assessment, it does not require a new assessment. And here is the tip block provided to us by VDOT. And our request today is that the TAC recommend approval of the proposed tip amendment as requested by VDOT. And if anyone has any questions, again, be happy to take them.
Thank you, Will. Any comments or discussion? If not, I'll have a motion.
This is Sharon Smidler. I make a motion for approval.
Joe Biden, second.
Thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any, anyone opposed? Very well, the motion carries. Moving on to item number 9, which is the Transportation Improvement Program tip for fiscal year 27 through fiscal year 2030. We'll get a presentation from Carrie on this. And this is an action item to recommend approval of the draft tip amendment. And Carrie, we'll turn it over to you.
Good morning, TAC, and thank you for your time today. My name is Carrie Wagenhauser, and I'm here to walk you through the FY27 through FY30 Transportation Improvement Program. I'll also briefly touch on the draft conformity associated with the TIP and outline today's action items. The Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, is a federally required 4-year planning document that lists all transportation projects seeking federal funding in our region. It's fully coordinated with the Long-Range Transportation Plan, the statewide TIP, and it's developed in partnership with the state, regional, and local agencies. The draft TIP was released for public comment on March 12th, 2026. This TIP was developed collaboratively with partners like VDOT, DRPT, GRTC, and regional human service providers. Projects are tracked using UPC and STIP codes so they can be followed from planning through implementation. This document includes both ungrouped and grouped projects. It's supported by a dedicated searchable TIP engagement website and improves transparency with public access. The public comment period for the draft TIP ran from March 12th through April 13th, 2026. Outreach included notices in regional newspapers and in-person opportunity at Pathways to the Future regional symposium events. The draft TIP is also available online through the engagement period. As of March 23rd, we received 3 public comments, which we will be reviewing today. These numbers, again, have been updated because March 23rd was a little while ago, and we have updated them to reflect the numbers as of last night. Public comments show strong enthusiasm for transit, active transportation investments, particularly GRTC projects, pulse expansions, and trail and sidewalk improvements. Respondents consistently value projects that improve safety, expand mobility options, and help reduce reliance on single occupancy vehicles. There was significant concern about continued highway expansions, major expansions, specifically in growth areas like Short Pump. Many commenters cited induced demand, sprawl, high costs, and long-term maintenance burdens as reasons these investments feel misaligned with our regional goals. Today, we're asking the TAC to review the draft FY27 through FY2030 TIPs and provide a recommendation of approval to the Rrtpo Policy Board.
Thank you, Carrie. So would anyone like to give comments on their highway projects, or any suggestions? All right, hearing no comments, nobody in the chat, will we like to get a motion to approve?
This is Sharon Smidler. I make a motion for approval.
Thank you. Do we need a second?
This is
JJ,
Patrick
I'll second.
Longerbeam Goochland. A second.
Thank you, Patrick. Now we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Very well, the motion carries. We'll move on to item number 10, which is the Regional Conformity Assessment Report with Carrie.
Good morning, TAC. Again, thank you for your time and attention. My name is Carrie, and this is the Regional Conformity Assessment Report. As a part of developing the FY27 through FY30 Transportation Improvement Program, federal law requires us to demonstrate conformity with the Clean Air Act. While the Richmond and Petersburg region currently meets all emission standards, it was previously designated as a region of non-attainment, and later a maintenance area for the 1997 8-hour ozone standard. A 2018 court decision clarified that regions with this history must continue making conformity determinations even if they now meet newer standards. This is why analysis is still required today. Following the required interagency consultation with federal, state, and local partners, a draft regional conformity assessment report was prepared and reviewed. After discussion with the Technical Advisory Committee, advanced the draft, allowing the public comment period to begin. The public comment review officially opened March 10th, 2026, giving stakeholders, the public an opportunity to provide input before final action was taken. The conformity analysis report includes projects located within the former 8-hour ozone maintenance area. These consist of the constrained project list from the Connect RVA 2045 Long Range Plan, along with the in-group projects included in the FY27 through FY30 TIP. Together, these projects make the Rrtpo project set used for this analysis. The Policy Board formally approved this project list March 5th, 2026. While many respondents agree with the quality error findings, they expressed frustration that the report focuses on minimum compliance rather than meaningful emission reduction. Commenters are asking for stronger leadership, clearer project level accountability, and greater attention to equity and community health impacts. Today, we're asking TAC to review this analysis and recommend approval to the Policy Board.
Thank you, Carrie. So we are meeting required regulations on this air report. So if there's any comments or discussion.
Naomi with VDOT, I think I just want to acknowledge the comments really quick. I think for both this one and the comments on the tip step, definitely something to consider for us, especially for the tip step. Right now, those projects are mostly ongoing and ready to go, so not much of a change we can make right now, but definitely taking into consideration in the future how we can look at more transit alternative transportation and other mobility options as well. But for now, with this, I think I'm good to make a recommendation to approve.
This is JJ. I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, I'll hear a motion.
I thought
Oh,
had
we've got the motion. Sorry, Naomi and JJ. All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. Anyone opposed? Very well. The motion carries. We'll take Naomi's comments to heart and see what we can do to do more in the future. We'll move on to item number 11, which is the fiscal year 27 through fiscal year 32 flexible regional funding with Carrie. This is also an action item, and she will give a presentation on that.
Good morning, members of the Technical Advisory Committee. My name is Carrie Wagenhauser, and today I'll be walking you through the draft FY27 through FY2030 allocations plan. This slide summarizes the existing commitments funded through RSTP and CMAQ. They are previously approved projects across Chesterfield, Henrico, Richmond, and Ridefinders that must be carried forward into the new allocation period. In total, we're carrying just over 10.7 million in RSTP commitments and about 8.3 million in CMAQ commitments. These existing obligations do reduce the amount of funding available for new projects. Here we see existing project expenditures compared against the total funding by program after accounting for the prior commitments, approximately 34.7 million in STBG funds, 9.8 million in CMAQ, and just under 6 million in CRP remain available. These remaining balances form the funding pool for the set of new projects you'll see next. This slide presents the draft list of new projects proposed for funding between FY27 through FY32. The list reflects a mix of roadway improvements, transit investments, pedestrian connections, and system management projects across the region. Several projects leverage local or partner funding, while others are fully funded through federal resources. Large investments include the GRTC North-South BRT and regional signal infrastructure upgrades. This slide puts everything together, showing the total available funding for existing commitments, new project expenditures, and overall remaining balances across the region. Overall, about 70 million is available, while roughly 42.2 million is programmed for new projects. This remains fiscally constrained while still retaining unallocated STBG funds as a buffer. To conclude, the staff is requesting that the Technical Advisory Committee approve the draft FY27 through FY2030 allocations plan.
Thank you, Carrie. Any discussion?
Yes, Daniel?
Yes, Sharon.
Hi, thank you.
Oh,
I
Daniel.
appreciate it. Oh, sorry. Thank you very much. So I am just looking at this list. I think these are some really amazing projects. I was wondering if folks would be amenable to looking at putting some of that unallocated balance on that next highest ranked project. So it's not on this list that you see here. And also, Madam Chair and Carrie, tell me if I'm speaking too early. But I would love to see some more funding from the unallocated balance go towards that Pulse BRT Western Extension. I think that is a great project for the region that has an extremely high benefit score. The piece that's kind of keeping it out of our recommended funding scenario is simply the price tag. And while I understand that that's how the funding allocation framework works, it could be a really, really strong opportunity to improve their leverage going into Smart Scale Round 7. So if folks are amenable, I'd love to offer that we spend some of this unallocated balance on that BRT Western Extension project.
All right, Daniel. Miles or Carrie, would you like to address Daniel's comments on how that can be done?
Sure, Madam Chair. In general, our policy has been to stop at the next project that we can't fund if we can't keep moving down the list. So that's just been the approach that the TPO has taken since we've kind of moved toward this scorecard format. It's like a Smart Scale Light. But obviously TAC can make that recommendation for partial funding if the project sponsor is open to that sort of thing. I think there's also consideration on another item that's on the next item on the agenda, which is an additional existing project request that I just want to highlight and make sure that that's also being factored in on any of these discussions. It's at about $600,000 that we're looking at for RSTP from that pot as well.
And Madam Chair, for the record, I would definitely not want to overlook that project. Thank you, Miles, for bringing that up.
Thank you, Miles. Sharon, you have your hand
Yes.
up?
Yes, so this is a GRTC application. It's located, in Henrico County, adjacent to the city. And yeah, it was, I saw Carrie put in the chat, it was a $16 million request. GRTC is applying for smart scale for this project. So we don't want to take the whole amount of unallocated funds out of the balance. But even if it was a portion of it, if TAC wanted to consider that, that would help with our lowering our smart scale funding request.
Thank you, Sharon. So I do see Amy has her hand up.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions. So on the north-south BRT and the pedestrian accommodations associated with that, it says there's no leverage. This funding is not being used as leverage. I'm just curious about why not. And I guess on the western extension, obviously I'm not opposed to that, but I mean, personally, I don't have enough information here, and I don't really know that a small incremental increase is really going to, enhance your chance for a smart scale. So I would like to know the thought process behind that, what the numbers look like. Otherwise, I'm not in favor of adding additional funding to that project at this time.
Thank you, Amy. JJ, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just had a question about how does this affect our ability to fund existing projects that come back in with shortfalls? Does it reduce our balance a lot, that we would be in a situation that could prevent us from funding projects that are getting close to construction?
Good question. Miles, do you want to address JJ's question on the funding?
Sure, I'm happy to address both that and the leveraging question on this table. So two things. One, the amount of funding on the slide previous that showed how much that was left over at the end of all of this, that is in addition to what we set aside by policy to be able to address those. So we set aside 10% for the first 3 years and then 20, 30, 40% for the last 3 before we even look at any of this. So it shouldn't have an impact on our ability to address those construction needs that come up. We kind of factor that in before we even get into any of this allocations. But the second question that I heard was on the leverage item. This is not to say that these applications do not have other leverage. So basically what this means is in our policy, there's a specific, this is a request for leveraging. And that means we only fund up to the PE value of the project. So you can go buy down the cost in Smart Scale or somewhere else. So where you see like the GRTC North-South BRT is not listed as leverage, that's because it is fully funding one stretch of the project. Same thing with the pedestrian connection. The East Parham Road, that's filling in funding on something that's already largely funded through the CTB, so it's filling in kind of the last little bit that Henrico needs. So the idea of it, the leverage is really, we need to flag which ones we are setting aside money to help chase after Smart Scale or something else, because we do have policies to bring that back to the TPO's pot if it's unsuccessful, just like in CVTA.
Okay, thank you for that, Miles. That's helpful.
Thank you. So
But I guess.
Go ahead, Amy.
So can you please address the questions about the Western Extension? I don't see any details about that here. I think I saw something in the chat. It's like 16 million. So what was their ask? 900? I'm sorry, I would like to see the details on that and understand what an incremental, like what amount are they wanting to increase that by that they believe will help their chances with smart scale. So just asking, Daniel, just asking for, well, let's give us more money. Well, what, and what does that do?
Yeah, I think it was about 16.7 million, 16.9 million. And then there was I think we were thinking originally the 9 million, but maybe it's just the CMAQ, what's the balance in unallocated CMAQ, which was about 5 million. And I do not have it pulled up. I know Ashley is on the call and GRTC is on the call. If you happen to have our smart scale applications pulled up with the breakdown of the GRTC Pulse Western extension, we could share that. But yeah, I don't have that information right in front of me, Amy, which is a good question to raise. And I hear Miles' point about like the leveraging. This wouldn't fully fund this portion.
Okay, so Sharon, just as a clarifier, so you're wanting the entire amount, the entire 9 million?
I'd be that, or I'm willing to go down to 5, or I understand or even just to help buy down the cost. But I know Miles is saying you can't do that with leveraging. If I could ask Ashley with Henrico to help me out. I see she has her hand raised. Sherry, is that all right?
Yes, Ashley.
Thank you. Hi, good morning, everyone. Our current smart scale ask is 40 million. So any bit that we can get to lower that is going to help us. It sounds like there's another project around 600,000. So I would say, Sharon, subtracting that from what's left over potentially would be our ask. So I think that's like 8 million-ish for the CMAQ and STBG funding left over.
And I think, Ashley, for the Pulse Western extension, I know there's some pending merit funding. I know we have some CBT regional funding.
There is, yes. There was a 20 million merit ask. And if GRTC is on the call, they have more information on that grant application. We've been adding a lot of different funding pots together to this project.
Right, yeah, we requested, sorry, let me raise my hand. I can add clarification if that's okay, Sherry.
Yep, go ahead, Tori.
Thank you, Sherry and Adrian.
Yeah, we have a couple of different applications and they put in the smart scale for about 40 million. And then we have a 23 million in for PE and construction through merit that we'll find out next week for. So anything that can add, because if we, obviously the amount that we get from this, if we didn't get smart scale, could offset a smaller amount that could go for additional merit funds as well.
And I will just add another clarifying point to that. So the 40 million smart scale ask, let's say if we were awarded the 20 million merit, that would be subtracted from that 40 million smart scale ask. Plus, let's just say we talk about an 8 million addition here from STBG and CMAQ, that would lower our smart scale ask even more, creating a higher cost benefit for.
All right, Naomi, you have your hand up.
Yes, I just pulled up the smart scale application, so it's just going to provide assistance as needed, but a lot of people covered a lot of things. So it looks like, yes, there's about $27.3 million already in other committed funds on this project, with 22 million from CVTA regional funds. And then I just wanted to note the project description a little bit, just so people have a sense what these funds are going towards. And that is to, of course, extend the GRTC Pulse from Willalon Drive to Parham Road. It includes dedicated bus lanes as well as providing 13 level boarding BRT stations along Broad Street as well, and includes sidewalk improvements to pedestrians to access those stations and station amenities. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Naomi. Daniel, I see your hand up.
I think Amy may have been before me, sorry.
Okay, Amy.
Okay, so a couple questions. I guess, where are we with FTA funding for this? Is this, how many miles is this extension? And, you know, let's not forget that when Broad Street was reconstructed, I don't believe sidewalks were part of that project, right? And they probably should have been. So I'm wondering how much local funding is Henrico County putting into this project? So those are some basic questions.
I'll touch on the sidewalk, and then if Ashley could look up the miles, and maybe Adrian could touch on the FTA. But as far as the sidewalk, West Broad Street, we have a smart scale project, an STBG project that goes from West Broad at Willow Lawn Drive to West Broad and Parham. And those are under design, and we've been coordinating with the BRT, Western Extension PE, with making sure there's sidewalk on both sides of the street. Those are separate grant applications, and we've been coordinating with the PE for the BRT Western Extension. Ashley, do you happen to have the mileage between Willow Lawn and Parham?
I think it's 4 miles.
Okay. And Adrian, any update where we are with FTA?
Sorry, was the request about the funding for FTA or where we are with the process?
Yeah,
with FTA?
yeah. Where are you? Are you applying for FTA funding for this? Are you in this? Are you in any of the new small starts, I guess, program?
So sorry, I had my spreadsheet. This project is like roughly a total of about $60 million all in with engineering. So all of the funds together, what we have so far and what we have with the DRPT applications, this application and others. And then our smart scale, of course, is additional and can be pulled back in terms of the amount based on what we get up to that point with the final application. Sorry, with all that saying is that the gap for federal is not necessarily identified in terms of applications, because we think we will be close with the current applications that are in. Now, if that is not the case, we will be seeking additional funds. But yeah, this one's 60 million all in with engineering.
So that's a no. You're not pursuing FTA funding for this project.
If we, so I'm sorry, I'm pulling up our
At this point,
so
you're
after
not.
we find out with all this, we are applying. Bus and bus facilities is on our list once we kind of find out where we are with the state and the regional funds. But not a major application because we have other funds already in.
Thank you.
Yep. So Danielle, I'm gonna go back to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be quick. I think this is just from this standpoint, it feels like a really good opportunity for us to move the chains on a good project that's essentially ready and is looking for essentially this last bit of funding. And if we can strengthen its smart scale application, I think that'd be a huge win for the region and absolutely the most appropriate use of this kind of funding. But yeah, really good questions though all around, and I appreciate everyone for helping address them.
Thank you, Daniel. Joe, you had your hand up.
Yes, so and this may have already been stated, so I apologize, but just at a high level, what is the total cost, the smart scale application total cost, and how much other funding is committed? I guess what I'm getting at is that I mean, it comes a point where, I mean, if we've already bought down the cost, if you will, by whatever percentage, 40% or 50%. I mean, I almost think that we're kind of throwing money at something that we don't need to do. So in other words, I mean, we could guarantee funding if we increase the leverage amount to 90%, right? So what is that point? Nobody will know until the scores are in. But can somebody tell me where we are currently? That's a percentage.
I'm pulling up my numbers real quick. Hold on one moment. And then Adrian, if you have them easily accessible, that would be helpful too.
Yeah. I don't believe I ever heard, is Henrico putting any funding in for this project?
We have,
Go ahead, Ashley.
I was gonna say, we are required to do local match for the grants that are secured. Adrian, I don't know what that percentage is, but I know that we are committing a capital local match.
Yeah, we seek reimbursement for them for the matches and whether they're using your local funds or your CBTA regional. I'm not sure, but they are contributing. Sorry, according to my spreadsheet, I have. I don't know this, Ashley. I mean, Henrico can speak to it. I know that they're giving matching funds for all the local match piece that goes towards it. I'm not sure if it's coming from their CBTA regional that we got for leveraging purposes or from their CBTA, sorry, or from their local match.
Right, okay.
The other question, as far as funds that someone asked, it looks like we have secured right now about 28.1 million. And it looks like we have pending grants taking out the other two. So I guess including merit, about 25.4 that is pending with merit. So that leaves the gap of about 9.5 million for the project if we are successful with merit to fund it.
Maybe, I'm sorry. This is a lot to follow. I might not be understanding, but so there is a smart scale application that is pending. And the request for that smart scale application is what? The amount, dollar amount.
It is currently 40 million for pre-apps. We have been working with Rrtpo and they let us know we could lower it if we secure more funding before final application is due. We currently have that 20 million merit grant pending a potential award that we could subtract from our ask. Plus,
so
potentially
you're 40 million and the total cost. In other words, I'm trying to get at the cost benefit or the cost to the amount of funds that have been secured. So in other words, how much have you bought down the cost?
It looks like about 41%. So the total cost estimate of the whole project is 67 million, and the total requested funds are 40 million because about 27 million currently is being contributed. So that looks to be the case.
So you bought down, the cost has been purchased down or brought down by about 40%.
Yeah.
And if this has a strong, and I mean, all the arguments for that, this is a pretty good project that is likely to score pretty well on a benefit standpoint. You know, is it really necessary? I guess I'll just cut to, I don't support this. I just feel like there are so many questions I'm not comfortable supporting something like this on the fly. I think that we should stick with our current process and leave it be. I think it's a good project, and I think the chances seem pretty good based upon what's already been assigned. So that's my position. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. JJ, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I have two questions. So I heard a project description that included a lot of different elements, and the project on the CMAQ list was a transit signal priority. Is that correct? Are there pieces of the transit
Yes.
signal priority that has sidewalk and all of that as well?
So this is Sharon. It was request for a traffic signal priority with the STBG CMAQ CRP application. The sidewalk is separately funded existing projects in Smart Scale and STBG.
Okay. So that's like an element of the transit signal priority is just an element of the larger project.
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to get that clarified for anyone listening. And then my other question was going to be, would we have time to defer this and maybe come back to TAC with more information prior to Smart Scale being submitted of that August 1st deadline?
Miles, sorry, go ahead, Sharon.
Miles, do you want
Yeah.
to let us know what the timeline is on the Smart Scale?
Sure. So our next policy board meeting after this month will be in July. So if we leave this funding in the balance entry and TAC wants to reconsider this at the May or June meetings, we could revisit it and then bring that back. In terms of the process, I'd have to defer to Naomi about getting that into the 6-year program and the timing and what that would look like. But there would be an approval from the MPO to award the funding, which I would think would suffice to get that into leveraging.
What, do you have that off the top of your head? I'm looking right now, just seeing when leverage has to be put in officially, but what do you know off the top of your head?
I don't. I'm also trying to find it.
Great, we're looking, we'll let y'all know.
Thank you. Amy, did you have another question?
I just am in agreement that I think, number one, I'm not in supportive of this, of adding funding to this project in this manner. I think we need more information. So I concur with Joe on that. And also if we can just defer this for a month, I think that would be helpful. I'm not against the project, obviously, but I absolutely think that GRTC, needs to focus on the north-south. I understand that others are trying to get the western extension. And that's great, right? But let's do it in a way that makes sense for everybody.
Okay, Sharon, you have your hand up.
I hear what everybody's saying. I'm okay if we could do this later or pending once we have more information to answer these questions so people can think about it, make an more informed decision. If it looks like we could defer this till later and come back with additional information. I think we have a great group of projects currently listed on this screen. I'm excited about them, the ones that are here, but maybe if we could look at deferring this till later when we can come back with some more information if that meets the Smart Scale schedule. That sounds like a good approach.
Thank you. So we're looking at some schedules.
Yeah, I'm still looking. Is there any chance we can just bump this further down the agenda by chance while I get this answer? It looks, yeah. Let's see. Okay. I did get back August 1st or August 3rd, the application deadline. Technically, yeah, it's due by final app.
So Miles putting all the schedules together with Naomi's schedule for August 1st and then the policy board and do you think we're okay to bring this back in May to gather more information?
Yes, so we would have the opportunity for the board to act in July if TAC makes a recommendation in May or June to add that extra funding. But if not, we can advance this portion through the April meeting so we can get it into the 6-year program. So I think that creates the track to get this approved and still gives us the flexibility for Smart Scale on the Western extension.
Okay. So just, weigh in on everybody's comments. I think we could probably get a motion to defer until next month if everybody's in agreement with that.
I'm sorry, to clarify, Madam Chair, we do need action on the projects that are on the screen today, but we would be deferring on the additional component for the Western Extension.
Okay, gotcha. So is everybody clear on the motion?
Yes.
Yes, I'd like to recommend approval of the fiscal year 27-32 allocation plan as presented, and would support consideration of the Western Extension coming back to the TAC in an upcoming month to consider that for funding.
Thank you, Naomi.
Sharon Smidler, second.
Thank you, Sharon. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Very well. We'll get some more information together for our May meeting. We'll go ahead and move on to our item number 12. Fiscal year flexible regional funding and additional request, a presentation by Carrie on an off-cycle construction bid by Chesterfield. If you want to give us a presentation on that, Carrie.
Hi, good morning, members of the Technical Advisory Committee. My name is Carrie Wagenhauser, and I will be presenting the draft FY 2030 through FY 2030 allocation plans additional project requests from Chesterfield. I promise this will be the final presentation you'll hear from me this morning. We are officially in the home stretch. This slide summarizes the existing project commitments funded through the RSTP and CMAQ. These are previously approved projects across Chesterfield, Henrico, Richmond, and Ridefinders. These must be carried forward into the new allocation period. In total, the projects include just over 11.7 million in RSTP commitments and approximately 8.3 million in CMAQ commitments. These existing obligations reduce the amount of funding that would be available for new projects. This list does also include the late addition from Chesterfield, which could bring the total allocation for the existing projects to just under $20 million. You can see the new project is bolded in the list. Here we're seeing the existing project expenditures compared to the total available funding program. Approximately, after accounting for prior commitments, approximately 35 million in STBG funds and about 10 million in CMAQ funds, just under 6 million in CRP funds remain available. This also reflects the change in the additional project. These changes are bolded and will not impact the funding of new projects. They will just remove funds from the unallocated funding bucket. This slide shows the updated allocation funds, existing funds, existing project recommendations, and remaining funds. And of course, the unallocated funding as well. To conclude, staff is requesting that the Technical Advisory Committee approve the additional existing project in the draft FY 27 through FY 32 allocations plan.
Thank you, Carrie. Any discussion?
This is Daniel Wagner. I'll make a motion to recommend the approval of the additional request for this project.
Thank you, Daniel.
Sharon Smidler, second.
Thank you, Sharon. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Very well. We'll move on to item number 13, which is the Rrtpo self-certification resolution, and we'll have Miles Bushing give us information on this required administrative function.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. So thank you, everyone. There's no PowerPoint for this one. This is a pretty straightforward item, but when we adopt the TIP, so every 3 years when we adopt the TIP, we are required by federal law to also adopt a self-certification resolution. So the Rrtpo has to essentially certify that we are meeting the requirements of metropolitan planning, the Clean Air Act, and various non-discrimination authorities. and so ADA, older Americans. So the idea is that it's the Rrtpo saying, yes, we are following all the requirements that are set up for MPOs. Since we are also a large MPO serving a region of more than 200,000 people, we also are subject to a federal review every 4 years where FTA and Federal Highways come in and review the program for compliance with these exact same regulations. And conveniently this year, we just went through that process. So the federal site visit was in February. We received our letter certifying the program in early March. So what we have prepared in the agenda packet was a questionnaire walking through sort of how we are meeting all the various requirements. That questionnaire is modeled on what Hampton Roads does. But we want to point to that as well as the federal certification letter that we have received to basically say that we are meeting those requirements. And so what we're asking from TAC today is to support the policy board essentially approving a resolution saying that we are meeting the requirements of the MPO program. And again, this is the third and final component that's required to adopt the TIP. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Miles. If there's no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
Sure. I'd like to make a motion to support or recommend approval of the self-certification as presented.
And this is Sharon Smibler. I'll second.
Thank you, Naomi and Sharon, and we'll take a voice vote. All those in favor of the resolution, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Very well, we'll get that to the policy board. Moving on to item number 14, fiscal year 27 Unified Planning Work Program, the UPWP. We'll have a presentation on Miles on that.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. This item is our budget and work program for the upcoming fiscal year. And so I wanted to walk you through what's in the full documents in your agenda packet, but I'll walk you through at a high level what's in there. Essentially, it's a one-year budget, which lays out the tasks and projects that we're going to be working on while continuing to meet that 3 C's process. So it's continuous, cooperative, and comprehensive. We're working together across the whole region and doing it on an ongoing basis. So a couple of highlights. Our focus areas for the upcoming year. This has bin something we've discussed with the executive committee, and that really helped shape what we were focusing on. But in large part, it's a carryover from where we were at this year. So the big things, we're focusing on the 2026 federal certification. So as I just noted in the last item, we got that certification letter in March. We are still waiting on the final report with any recommendations, any findings, anything that they want us to work on and focus on. So obviously, as soon as we have that, that's going to be a priority for us to continue to make sure that the program is meeting all the expectations of our federal partners. Core planning requirements. This is, as some of you have heard me say, this year was a 1 in 60 year event. We had the TIP due this year, we had the Rrtp due, and we had a federal certification. That doesn't happen very often. And so this is kind of seeing those projects to completion. So the Rrtp, our targeted adoption is by September. So there'll be a little bit of work through the first quarter to get that ready for the policy board's review. And then the new TIP that we just acted on today will move through and expected to go live sometime around October. And there'll be some processing of like rollover amendments as usual. So that's kind of just continuing those core products. And then the last 2 items that are our big priorities for the year, prioritizing safety and envisioning the multimodal future. So that's really focusing on what we can do to continue to improve the outcomes in terms of fatalities and serious injuries, and then continuing to focus on transit, on bike ped connections, and on freight and intermodal connections throughout the region. So you all have the work plan. Basically, the way you read the project pages, there's a budget and description for each task. There's a reference to any key plans, some indicators of how we're doing in that focus area, ongoing and maintenance activities. So kind of what are those continuous actions that we have to do for that program area? And then any specific deliverables. So something with an actual deadline, there's a report, there's something that we'll be producing as part of that work plan. And then on the right-hand side, it walks us through the federal planning factors that we're addressing. So high level, program administration. This is basically managing our meetings, everything that we do month to month, continuous progress reporting, and developing the next year's UPWP. So that's about $325,000 budget. And then we have a broad domain that we call data coordination and engagement. This is the kind of across the planning focus areas. So outside of just transportation, we have to coordinate with housing, we have to coordinate with environmental planning, we have to get data, we have to do engagement. So those are kind of the broad comprehensive planning functions outside of just the narrow transportation lane. So outreach and engagement, $417,000, and that's all of our outreach that goes into all of our different plans and activities that we're working on. The main deliverable, and this is something you may all already be aware of, is annually we publish a report on how we did last year. What sorts of events did we go to? How many people did we talk to? How many responses did we get on the plans we were working on? So that's the main product that will go into that. Data and modeling is another big one for us. So this is kind of the backbone that feeds into every study and plan that we have. So this is all the analysis, the data collection, the dashboards, everything that we put together. The big deliverable that we have, which I think all of you are familiar with already, is our socioeconomic data update. So we are trying to get to a 2025 base year and a 2055 future year. And that is targeted for completion by the end of this year, with board adoption somewhere around January or February, depending on what their meeting schedule looks like. That's a $529,000 budget. And then the next three are kind of our coordination across with our partners in kind of the broader comprehensive planning. So housing and economy, this is $100,000. The focus is the residential market value analysis, which I know some of you have been involved in. This is how do we turn that into policies that can also help with transportation access. So how do we look at displacement? How do we look at affordability? And what's that connection to transportation access? And what is that? What can we create that would feed that into the next LRTP? So kind of using housing policy, transportation policy is it's kind of the first leg of that. It's the defensive side before we get into building new stuff. The next focus area that we have is system readiness, also $100,000. This is really a resilience. So focusing on how do we avoid disasters and ensure that the transportation system continues to function and bounces back. And this deliverable, the key deliverable here, is a carryover item from this fiscal year. So it's an item that we have realized we're not going to be able to complete this year. We're looking to move it over to next year's work program for completion. And it's a sidewalk analysis, so the last mile to transit, but also looking at heat islands. So how do we make those walks actually manageable in the summer when it's hot? How do we make it something that's not going to exclude people just because it's unbearably difficult to get there? And the main reason for carrying this one over is VDOT is wrapping up a statewide pedestrian infrastructure inventory. And so we want to be able to fold in the latest and greatest data into that analysis rather than complete it now and then have to do it again next year. And then the final one in this sort of coordination focus is our environmental linkages. This is where we do all of the Rrtpo work, all of our environmental reviews of projects. The big things here, we're completing an updated mapping of criteria pollutant emissions. So this is kind of focusing on where it's spread out throughout the region. This one is also a carryover from this fiscal 26. The rationale and the reason for that is that the data set that we were using is no longer available. So we are going to have to find a new data source to find for those sources. So that is something that has just unfortunately been abandoned over the past year. So we're going to have to find the new data set to make that one work. The other item on here is looking at a toolkit for local governments to help prioritize emissions reductions that are mitigating transportation infrastructure, hazards to transportation infrastructure. This is really focusing on aligning the transportation and emissions with our regional air quality plan, which looks at criteria pollutants and climate change. So trying to focus on items that what we can do to address those carbon emissions as well as the criteria pollutants from ongoing planning activities. All right, so I'm halfway done. So the next piece is really the traditional transportation focus. So long range planning, we have the LRTP, 232,000. This is really wrapping up this LRTP, which, as many of you know, we are getting very close to the end at this point. So we are finalizing our project set and then starting the wrap up analysis now. So this would be completing air quality conformity and then really moving through adoption of that plan. The other thing that we want to start working on is the preliminary scope and schedule for the next update, because while it's 5 years away, we have steps that we have to work on throughout that entire process to make it happen. Transit and passenger rail, our primary focus for the upcoming year is working with GRTC. I know we've had a lot of discussions, and it's the next item on the agenda, on the CVTA funding and the regional public transportation plan. And so our primary focus is coordinating with the TAC and with GRTC to make sure that we have a plan in place that will help make that process better moving forward. And then under active transportation, many of you have been plugged in on the 3-notched or the Western Spine study that's ongoing. So that will be continuing through the next fiscal year and wrapping up. We will also be updating our last mile to transit sidewalk gaps analysis using that new VDOT data set, as I mentioned. So that's the, and then the last one that we have in planning is freight and intermodal. This is really the year where we're going to start moving into an update of our intermodal study for the region. So we will be developing the scope and schedule for the strategy to be completed in a future fiscal year. But this is really pulling together all those different pieces. So as many of you know, we kind of restarted the freight program a couple years ago. We've been gathering data, talking to various partners and parties across the region. So this will be us scoping that out. Another piece of that is the data work to really get a better grasp on freight generation and sort of understanding the freight classifications within our region. And then the final bit is the short range planning. So high level financial programming, it's an off year for CVTA and the TPO funding. So just existing project requests that come through. We'll be completing rollover amendments for the TIP and then updating our annual obligation report in December. So this is a relatively light year on the financial programming side. Safety, safe streets and roads. The biggest thing that we're targeting for the upcoming year, obviously there's roadway safety targets, but we also are hoping to be able to work with the TAC to select one of our high injury network corridors that are coming out of the safety plan and be able to conduct a road safety assessment, partnering with VDOT, the impacted localities, and advocates. So really diving into what do we do next? So we have these areas, what do we need to implement? How do we actually start making safety happen on the ground? And then the final item that we have under short range planning is system reliability. This is really our TDM, our maintenance, and sort of that congestion management process all folded into this bucket. The biggest things that we have is it's time for us to start updating our 4-year targets. And so we will be reviewing those targets and working with the TAC to set new targets for the upcoming 4-year period. So I know this is a lot of detail, high level. Last thing on here, this is not really part of the UPWP funding, but it's folded in because it is a big part of the MPO's work, is we are looking to substantially complete the prioritization process pilot over the next year. So this is basically a separate grant that we have through the USDOT to allow us to update our project selection process to really focus more on holistic life cycle cost accounting, return on investment, and then really folding in uncertainty and scenario planning more wholly. So big picture, this is what the budget looks like. It's about 8% for admin, 32% for the kind of general supportive planning, 20% for long range planning, a little bit 6% under short range, and then prioritization process is about 1/3. So this is in a lot of ways an extension of the short range planning because it's updating how we're going to approach project evaluation. And so this is the breakdown that's in the work program, rounded to the nearest dollar. but it's a $3.9 million budget overall. And as I mentioned, about a third of that is coming from that other grant. So it is a little bit smaller. It's about 2.58 for the MPO, sort of the traditional MPO funding streams. So this was a lot. I'm happy to answer any questions now, but the ask today is a recommendation of approval for this work program so we can advance it to the policy board for adoption. The reason we're coming to you now is that May 1st is our deadline to get this turned in to DRPT for our application for the year. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Miles. Naomi, I see you have your question.
Yeah, just a couple comments. Miles, this looks really good. Thanks for taking feedback or what we've received so far from FHWA in terms of adding some more specificity in terms of funding and dates. You know, the deadline is tight, but if there is time to add the dates for the accomplishment of those major achievements shown on page 14 and 15, I think that'd be really helpful. Let's see. And I know for the UPWP, it's always helpful if there are any big expensive conferences that are coming up, you know, not big and expensive, but if it's something that takes a financial cost, those are good things to have in there. So if you already know that you're going on any, or the team is going on any conferences or anything, those might be good to put in there as well. I think those are the biggest things I wanted to share. Let's see. I don't know how specific we can get with the costs associated with each deliverable per task that's planned. If you want to look into that, that could be helpful, but we could just wait to see the specific feedback from FHWA in terms of how detailed they want us to get in terms of the costs. So those are my comments. Looks really good.
Thank you, Naomi. So just to be clear, Miles, our action today would also include the grant that you're proposing that you said was a third of this.
That's correct. So that funding is already under its own separate agreement, but it'd be incorporated in the document as part of the agency's overall work. So part of what the MPO would be working on, what Plan RVA staff will be completing for the MPO.
Right, and so based on Naomi's comments, it sounds like we want to get a motion to approve with comments to add some dates to pages 14 and 15 and any possible conferences that that you all would like to attend. So if anyone would like to make a motion, if there's no further discussion.
So moved from Naomi.
Thank you, Naomi.
This is JJ, I'll
Seconded
second.
from Beth.
Oh, who was seconding? JJ? Did you catch JJ? Okay. All right. So all those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Thank you for all the hard work that you do to put these things together. We really appreciate it. So we'll move on to item number 15, the fiscal year 27 regional public transportation plan for GRTC. This is on page 33 in our meeting packet. And we will get a summary from Patricia Robinson.
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair. Thank you so much. Good morning, members of the board. I'm sorry, board committee. I can share my screen here. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have permission to share my screen.
Uh-oh.
Sid will give you permission in just a second.
Okay.
Give a minute. So this is an
Okay, you
ask
should
to
be good.
endorse the plan to the policy board and CVTA, correct?
Yes, that is correct. So this is the annual requirement identifying how GRTC plans to spend CVTA funds in the upcoming fiscal year. And so we are going to just do a quick run through on, that really is the overview about what we did in 26 that was approved and accomplished, and then moving forward with our 27 priorities. Oh, there we go. There's share. All right. Just confirmation that everyone can see the screen?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. So like I said, this is just the overall background of this project, and the recommendation, the action item from today is that the TPO support GRTC's 2027 Regional Public Transportation Plan. Looking at what went into FY26 that we have previously been working off of, just because the 27 follows a very similar pattern here. So maintaining transit operations and current levels of service. There was 250,000 for planning studies, as well as some capital and technical assistance, maintaining state of good repair and rider experience. And then there's some examples there of those kinds of projects. And so for FY26, for the service updates, it really was focusing on replacing a couple of our low ridership, low service trips with these very limited service fixed routes with microtransit service. And so that's our Broad Rock microtransit, and then our expansion of our already existing Sandston microtransit zone. So just giving users in those areas much greater access to, as far as like service span and hours a day, as well as a larger reach for trips that they can complete. And so this is where really the majority of this presentation kind of focuses on. So these are our 27 priorities that we'd like approval on. We are working on maintaining transit operations. And so with that is restoring levels of service. We had workforce challenges that led to service reductions in February. This maintenance of transit operations still accounts pre-February as our baseline. So that is still something that we are evaluating and prioritizing service needs for reinstating that service as more and more operators get onboarded. And then there's a capital and technical assistance piece. And that's a $2 million matching funds, and that's a 2% of that $92 million that you see at the bottom of the table. The table below is GRTC's total capital merit applications, and so the 2% would be that $2 million matching funds. And that goes for projects such as fleet replacement, facility pavement repair, security upgrades, and some technical studies. Oh, and I sorry, I did have one note on here to make sure I mentioned that that level of service reduction that I mentioned, that is a 7% reduction from our total daily revenue hours that occurred. And that's what the restore service would be putting back, that 7% as needed, as evaluated in service priorities. And then as far as next steps go, it just kind of walks through the work that's been done to budget prep and create draft proposals. The approval process includes TPO TAC, followed by the policy board, and then it starts the CBTA round of finance, TAC, and full authority in May. And so I wanted to end here on the action item, and that is that GRTC would like to continue our practice of using funds accrued in the prior fiscal year for the next fiscal year's operations. So GRTC by June of 2026 is estimated to have 35.1 million, and the CBTA funds as planned is 33.2. So GRTC would like to recommend that the TPO TAC approve GRTC's plan to spend 33.2 million on state of transit operations and put that difference of 2 million in the restricted reserve for future use. I'm happy to take any additional questions.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Any discussion?
There's some hands raised. I think Chet raised his hand first.
Thank you. Go ahead, Chet.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to ask a question. I must admit that I have not been present for all of the previous TAC meetings, so this may have been addressed previously, but I had a question regarding the collaboration requirement. Can TAC kind of refresh my memory on what work you have done with GRTC to develop this plan? Thank you.
I'm sorry, is that for me to talk about the collaboration?
Yeah, sure.
I was interested in the TAC, but
Okay,
if
that's what I
if
thought.
the chair would refer but to direct it to you, that's.
So I can answer,
Go ahead.
I guess. Well, so Chet, I guess that's a great question. And this is, last month, there was a presentation requesting approval of for fiscal year 27 funding, right? Of CVTA money, but there was like very little detail. So there were a lot of questions, a lot of discussion, which led to a slightly more informative presentation. There were a series of questions that were asked that I think might be part of this presentation at the end that were sort of answered. I don't think they really understood the questions properly on all of them, but that's a separate conversation. So that's where we got to where we are. If I may go ahead and just ask my question really quick. Patricia, could you please go back to your slide with the funding breakdown? Yeah. Okay. So what is your $11.3 million for business improvement? What I missed that. What does that entail? What's in business improvement?
Yeah, let me grab that. So business improvement includes things such as various interns for our different departments, as well as a service performance standards study, bus operator workforce preference study. There's some Udemy training for HR included, as well as ERP modernization.
For $11 million. $11 million for that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then the service expansion for $44 million. What is that?
Yes, that is primarily the north-south engineering and the construction of the western BRT are the two highest ones there.
And the construction of the Western BRT, did I hear you say?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we just had a whole discussion about expansion of the west side the western expansion of the BRT. So what is, and that's 60, well, we were told $60 million, but it was clarified by Naomi that it's $67 million. So you have all of this money that you're applying for through Smart Scale and the Merit and other sources of funding to help support the pedestrian facilities on other, I guess, as various other funding outside of this. So how much of this $44 million is going towards that?
Madam Chair, I also see that Adrienne, our chief of staff, has her hand raised as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So Adrienne, did you want to weigh in on that question for Amy?
Sure. Yeah, I can answer Amy's question, and then I can also respond to Chet as well. Amy, so this sheet that she is showing, is this our full merit application? Most of these are not, especially the expansion ones, those are not using any of our CVTA dollars for matching. We just put our full list in here to see what our priorities are for FY27. As I mentioned earlier, the 23 million is what we have for the Western extension within merit. So that's about half of that amount right there that you see. And that would be matched with, right now we have it projected as being matched with CVTA regional funds if we were to get the merit application. Is that the specific one, sorry, that you asked? What was the other one you asked, Amy?
Well, I was curious about the business improvement.
The business
$11 million.
Yeah, that's just a mixture. Sorry, I'm trying to in time for the business improvements. She hit all of them. A big one, I mean, it's for as we are growing as far as just tracking things and all these grants that we're getting, a big piece of that actually is our ERP request for doing a new app. We have a request for application. We don't find out if we get these. These are our current applications, so you guys know that. So we'll find out next week what we actually get, of course, and this list will be refined, but have to move forward with what it is. But those are a lot of our just internal things, whether it's HR improvements, new workflow and flow improvements, or studies. That's what we identify within that category. And the match that comes from $11 million. Yes, yes.
All right, we need a breakdown of that. That's wow.
Can I ask why though? That's not for the.
And that just seems, I mean, that $11 million just seems like a lot for those particular items. So I'm just curious,
So the biggest one is the ERP at about 9 million, and that we don't have an ERP system today. So that's a new system for implement.
ERP is employment retention?
Oh, no, that's our, so that's like our fleet system, our asset management system, our financial system, all of like our revenue hours and miles tracking coming from our, again, from the actual, like cover systems would feed into that. So that's our actual basically internal operating system. Today, they're all disparate. They're not connected. We do a lot of things with spreadsheets. So this helps us, and as well as our grants are all spreadsheets. And as we've grown in grants over the last however many years, we need a system so that we are making sure we're compliant with everything. So that's the big one. That's a whole new system.
Okay, that helps. That's
yeah. So that's 9 of the 2. The rest is 2 million. Is just across the board with a lot of different things.
So your ask for CVTA money is the 31.2 million. Is that it, or was it the 32? Sorry.
It's 31.2 million, and that's just for keeping service as it is today. We put in some expansion things last year, which are priority, and those are still grant funded. So what we're requesting is to basically keep service levels. The pilots that you've seen that went in the past that were all listed as priorities, this is their last year. So we're working on just looking at what's in place. And then you guys, so we did come in February to present this plan, and it was baseline. And then what we said was we've taken all the priorities from the previous years and put those in basically the last 2 years. And so we're watching them for now. So GRTC is not recommending any changes just based on our required TSP efforts that have to be done annually. So we did work with every jurisdiction on that. A lot of jurisdictions are kind of doing, like, for example, I'm gonna call it Chesterfield is kind of doing their own study. They're doing microtransit right now. So any inputs that come, we are going to incorporate in our FY28 as well. We've taken the extra step of re-engaging every jurisdiction as we see what's happening with the pilots in 27 and their last year. We are engaging the jurisdictions to also see their needs so we can have a priority and more robust, I guess, engagement and collaboration effort. I could kind of acknowledging Chet's question. The requirement, as she had on the first slide, is for us to basically follow the DRPT requirements for TSP as an input, and we use the TPO TAC as kind of that effort. But we did work through the TSP effort for the inputs, which were very minimal for FY27. So that's why we're kind of maintaining status for this year. So 31.2 to keep our service, and then 2 million is for non-major application matches. So things that are kind of general service, like business improvements, buses, paving, our transfer station, things that are more SGR, or just facility improvements are what we're identifying for matching with the local 4% requirement that is typical of kind of our merit applications.
Right. Okay. And then one final question. How much CVTA funding do you have collectively in your restricted reserve fund, which is different than your fund balance, right? So your restricted reserve fund.
Do you happen to have that slide, Tricia? We had a slide at the end anticipating that question.
The restricted well, I asked the question, and so I think it was a terminology, right? So we asked the question of what is your fund balance, but really I think the question that I was trying to get to was what is in the restricted fund, right? So how much funding of CVTA money do you have that hasn't been programmed for anything? Yeah. and you're saving it up basically.
Right. So this shows, if you looked at that restricted reserve balance, and I don't have it unfortunately aggregated on this sheet, but I want to say it's somewhere in the 50 millions is what we have altogether with this. But so in the first year, because we use it based on accrual, that was the amount that we had received in FY21, and we ended up using our ARPA dollars because unlike that was what we needed for operations, because the jurisdictions immediately cut their contributions by the 50% allowed amount within the legislation. We couldn't make it without accruing the money, so we used ARPA.
Right.
So that total amount we put into the restricted reserve. So that's our original kind of our buffer. And then every year we've gotten grants to offset a lot of the identified priorities for expansion. So just like this year, we've been able to put some of the delta into the reserve. So you got the 7.3, the 9, the 7.1, and as you can see, we're using more and more of it every year, where it started at 29 and now we're at started at 21 and now we're at 31.2 as the maintenance kind of effort. So I want to say, Amy, I don't have it aggregated, but I want to say it's between like somewhere around 55. I can get you the exact number. I have another PowerPoint with that, but I want you to put the caveat that we use, as Tricia said, the money we accrue in the previous year. If you go back to your recommendation slide, Tricia.
Right. So you're putting the extra money.
We put
into
all
that
of,
reserve.
we use that in the next year. So even though I said it's 55, 33.2 of that is going to be used for next year. And then as we accrue the next year, we'll put all that in. So it'll always stay, hopefully, until we need to, until we don't have a delta that we can put in the restricted reserve and have to start using that to basically maintain service. We'll always use the next year. So the projections you've seen before, or at some point, and we're getting close to like basically using all of it. We will have to, the projections are showing that, let's say it's 36.5 we need next year. We would have to use some of that restricted reserve to go towards just the maintenance of service, which no longer would allow us to put any in there. That's the projections. We're of course working on additional revenue sources and also just making sure we have a tight budget to stay as being able to not use any of the restricted reserve. So I mean, if you take that 55 and then look at we're using 33.2, that's the actual amount that we would have in the restricted reserve.
Okay. That's very helpful. Thank you, Adrian.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. And I think it's fair to clarify here that, you know, this is a good process. I think that the legislation has put into place where the localities have an opportunity to ask these questions of GRTC during the TPO process, because there are several localities that are contributing funding and we do not have a seat at the table, nor do we really have any other avenue of asking questions. So this is really our opportunity to have the questions answered, right? So I think that's why, you know, the legislation was designed the way it was, and I'm grateful for that. You know, I'm also, you know, pleased that, you know, GRTC has a good team right now on to do the fiscal year 27 to 32 long range plan. I think that localities really need to pay attention to that, and especially the rural localities that, you know, are trying to have fun, trying to have service through GRTC, and maybe it needs to be a different model. From my perspective, you know, we will contribute to that process, knowing that we have other transit provider that we intend to maintain. We just launched our microtransit service last week, and I think it's going to do really well. But we obviously want to tap into that from a regional perspective, as you know, to maximize those services for our community that is outside of the GRTC region. So anyway, thank you. I appreciate your opportunity, you know, the opportunity to ask these questions, and I appreciate GRTC's effort in putting this in, you know, the responses together, and the collaborative spirit of things. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. I just had a question on your ERP. Is that hardware and software that is a multi-year contract, or is that a one-time install, or under that $11 million figure?
Yeah, so it's a mixture. It's also the implementer. The individuals are coming in to put the system in place. But yes, it's not hardware. It's software, and then the actual implementation process itself and the support behind it.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like a subscription process over the years.
Yeah, it's cloud-based.
Good. Okay. Very good. Well, that will probably help you doing all your long-range planning in the coming year.
We so need it. Yes, thanks.
I feel you living in the spreadsheet world. All right. If there aren't any other comments or concerns, are we ready to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the fiscal year 27 CBTA transit funding for GRTC.
This is Sharon Smidler, I second.
Thank you, Amy and Sharon. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Very well, thank you. So we'll move on to item number 16, our regional safety plan update by Dan. Stand with us? Yep, I did.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. So today I'll be updating TAC on two things, what we heard from the public during our engagement process these past few months for the regional safety plan, and how we've translated that into a set of draft actions. There's a lot of information here, but I'll aim to keep this pretty brief. We've completed the core analytical work, so crash data analysis, high injury network development, and our core community engagement. Those three processes are now coming together into the draft plan. So right now we're focusing on the regional safety corridor development. So working through how the data and community input connect to specific priority corridors and recommendations. So the draft plan will go out to TAC for review by the end of April. So in a couple weeks, with the plan completion in May and policy board adoption this summer. First, just a little context from the 2020 to 2025 crash data. A few numbers stand out. The first three crash factors just showing all crashes versus fatal crashes. I wanted to focus on one that's perhaps the most glaring, which is that pedestrians were involved in just 1.4% of all crashes, but made up over 1 in 5 deaths. And then looking at the mode breakdown on the right, we can see that vulnerable road users have made up less than 2% of all crashes, but nearly 1 in 4 deaths. So now onto the engagement. The survey received 1,073 responses, which is a strong return for a non-core regional plan. We covered all 9 localities and supplemented the survey with more than 30 in-person events, group discussions, interviews, and online comment collection with specific efforts to reach youth respondents in communities that are typically underrepresented in the planning process. Nearly half of respondents described their community as urban, 43% suburban, and 9% rural. This was self-described. So the survey does skew somewhat towards urban perspectives, which is worth keeping in mind. But to account for that, we broke responses down by locality, and the breakdowns will be in the plan's appendix. And I can also briefly go over those today as well. But that said, main themes did hold up across all contexts and localities, and you can see that further in the tables later. So three themes came through consistently across every engagement channel. The first is that speed is the defining safety concern. And the first quote here from one Hanover County resident captures it directly. Infrastructure is designed to move cars as quickly as possible instead of prioritizing people. And that's a driver and somebody who bikes saying that the road itself is a problem and that it's a systemic issue. The second theme is that walking and biking feel dangerous. And respondents were clear that they believe that this is primarily an infrastructure problem and not just a behavioral problem. And so one Henrico resident describes a layered absence of no sidewalks, no push-button crosswalks, and no cultural expectations that drivers will stop for pedestrians. So these aren't complaints about specific locations. They describe a system gap that people experience every day. And the third theme is that people want physical solutions and not just enforcement. And this Chesterfield resident quote is worth noting because it comes from someone who identifies themselves solely as a driver, but explicitly asking for stronger engineering controls to be built into the environment. So that's the safe system argument coming from the public unprompted. To put the quantitative data into context, the survey primarily used a 1 to 5 Likert scale across 4 different categories, so behavioral, design, enforcement, and community observations. This gave us both the attitudinal data behind the themes and a way to compare responses across localities. So the scale goes from strongly disagree at 1 to strongly agree at 5. So just keep that in mind for the next slide. The scale data reinforces what the qualitative responses told us, and several findings are directly relevant to how we structured the draft actions. There was strong agreement, 4.08, on road design having a greater impact on driver speed than enforcement. So people understand the mechanisms there. They're not asking for more police or enforcement directly. They're asking for us to change how we approach design of physical spaces. Support for giving pedestrians more time to cross at signals, 4.15, also strong. Support for roads designed to slow speeds near pedestrians and cyclists, 4.56, even stronger agreement. And a theme that I keep coming back to, support for safer conditions for people outside of a car, even if it adds a couple minutes to a trip, scored 4.66, which is the highest of any item in the entire survey. And that's across all localities. It scored quite high. So that's a broad regional consensus that the trade-offs that safety actions require are acceptable to people. So I just want to quickly step away from the data for a moment to put one face on what these findings mean in practice. So Dee Allen is a Richmond resident and multidisciplinary artist who uses a power wheelchair, and we interviewed them as part of our qualitative engagement. And what they described is a daily negotiation with the street network that wasn't designed to include them. So one quote that we pulled from that discussion: "Leaving the house independently is incredibly important for my mental health, as I think it is for many of us. But I don't ever leave the house without remembering that I might be killed in the street. It feels very present to me all of the time." And that's not hyperbole, that's an accurate read of conditions on the ground as they describe them. But what Dee made clear is that the danger that they face doesn't come from primarily from aggressive or hostile drivers. It mainly comes from inattention. So from a system that doesn't require drivers to slow down, look, or expect somebody in a wheelchair to even be there. So the design failures that make streets dangerous for wheelchair users are the same failures that make them dangerous for everyone who isn't in a car. And so that just shows that accessibility and safety are strongly linked. So how does what we heard translate into what the plan recommends? The draft plan is organized around six draft actions, and the first three build the regional tools and frameworks. The next two put these tools into work on the ground, and these six hold everything accountable over time. So I'll just list them now and go over a bit more in the next slide. Number one is to create a regional street design manual. Number two is to develop a regional road safety assessment program. Number three, develop a regional quick build library. 4, implement quick build projects. 5, advance complementary safety action plans. And 6, track changes and keep safety as a regional priority. So first, building the foundation. As I said, the first 3 actions are about getting the regional infrastructure in place before we build on it. So just to focus a bit on action 1, that street design manual, this would be a shared practitioner-facing resource that is tied to street typologies that are to be developed regionally and cooperatively. And the region already has a foundation to build upon for this. The Plan RVA's Complete Streets work and the Ashland pilot program demonstrated that a regionally tailored design resource is both feasible and needed. But what's still missing is a consolidated guide that translates these principles into practical and context-sensitive direction. So looking at walkable town centers to rural 2-lane corridors. And importantly, this isn't intended to supersede VDOT's road design manual. Think of it more as like a companion resource in the tradition of US DOT's Rural Design Guide or NACDO's Urban Design Guide. So just showing localities and designers how to go further, applying proven safety treatments within the parameters that VDOT and local standards allow. So action 2 is the road safety assessment program. That would be a structured, repeatable process for identifying dangerous conditions that pairs technical crash analysis with community identified concern locations. So the emphasis on this is repeatable. It's not just having one-time audits. It's about ongoing programs that keep feeding information into our decisions. Action 3 is a regional quick build library. So a vetted menu of proven cost-effective safety treatments that localities can deploy without reinventing the wheel every time. So high visibility crosswalks, pedestrian refuge islands, flexible delineators, just treatments that we know work and packaged for broad regional use. Next, putting everything into practice. Action 4 puts the library to work. Quick build implementation means taking those treatments and actually installing them on real corridors. Demonstration projects that generate before and after safety data and build the public and political confidence needed to pursue larger capital investments. Action 5 is about making sure this plan doesn't operate in a silo. There are complementary planning efforts like speed management, lighting, ADA, transition planning, post-crash care that need to connect to what we're doing here. So that this action just identifies those gaps and advances the linkages. Action 6 is a safety dashboard, so a publicly accessible, regularly updated platform tracking KSI trends, quick build outcomes, and equity indicators. And the goal is to transform the plan from a document that gets adopted and sits on a shelf into an ongoing commitment with visible public metrics that are tied to regional programming. Just closing on how the loop on how explicitly the community input helped shape these actions, because it wasn't just a parallel process. Speed was the top concern that people asked for physical design solutions, so speed management should be a core treatment type in both the street design manual and the quick build library, not an afterthought. Walking and biking feel unsafe because the infrastructure is missing. So the road safety assessment program will highlight pedestrian and bike conditions and quick build leads with crossings and bike facilities in mind. Multiple respondents, including D. Allen, as mentioned earlier, noted that even new infrastructure often misses the mark. So the street design manual addresses that directly by setting vetted standards that new construction should meet. People said that they want to see visible changes. So quick builds will be specifically designed to produce near-term tangible results on the ground. And a recurring theme in the open-ended responses was skepticism that anything would actually change. So the safety dashboard is our answer to that. Progress will be public, tracked, and tied to TPO's own programming and reporting. So next steps, the draft plan goes out for TAC review by the end of April. There are 2 areas where we're specifically looking for input from this group before the plan is finalized. First, on the safety actions themselves. And just to note, there are specific tasks under each action that will be laid out in the draft for your review. And we want to know whether the direction and scope is right from each locality's perspective. And then second, on the individual safety priority corridors, the regional plan identifies corridors based on the high injury network and crash data, but each jurisdiction, local context matters, and we want the corridor list to reflect priorities that localities can actually act on. So plan completion is in May, and policy board adoption to follow. So I'll stop there and open it up for discussion if there's any time. More information will be provided with the draft for your input, but happy to go deeper into any of the findings.
Thank you, Dan. So any discussion from the members?
Just looking forward to the draft. Thanks for the update. Really appreciate it.
Very good. All right, well, so then we'll move on to our updates. If we could get an update from DRPT, Mr. Wood Hudson.
Sure, I know we are short on time, so I'm just going to be really quick. Major updates are the MPO 5303 applications are due to DRPT by May 1st. If you haven't heard, we are launching a new Virginia Breeze service that goes live on the 20th. This is the Tidewater Current, which will be connecting Virginia Beach to Harrisonburg. And we are very excited. Tickets are available to be purchased through our website and our partner websites. And lastly, I wanted to let folks know of a USDOT NOFO that has recently been released. This is the Safe Streets for All. So that's the SS4A program, as some people are probably more familiar with it. More information is available on USDOT's website. Applications are due to by May 26th. So if you have received one of those grants or interested in receiving one of those grants, I recommend taking a look at that website and getting more information about that program. That's all I got for updates today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wood. We'll get a update from GRTC.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Just a couple of short updates as well. GRTC launched a series of rider feedback surveys, and this was to better understand the rider experience and identify some opportunities to improve service. This week, we began the ABBG survey. ABBG stands for American Bus Benchmarking Group, and that customer satisfaction survey will run from now until May 10th. The feedback gathered through this effort will help inform service planning and ongoing system improvements. And then next, just regarding TAP and some community engagement, we're continuing to build momentum around the Transit Access Partnership through a series of community-focused efforts. This includes our 6-year open access celebration and micro fundraising initiatives tied with Earth Day this month. These efforts are building toward Tap into Transit Day, which is going to be July 14th. And this includes a partnership with local artist Silly Genius, who will create a series of art pieces that are placed on archived system maps and posters that we had throughout our system in years past. We are also continuing to work alongside our regional partners through a coalition to advance long-term sustainable funding strategies for open access transit. And that wraps up our agency update this month. I can take any questions if anybody has any, but that's it. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And we'll get an update from Ride Finders, Mr. O'Keefe. Is he with us? You unmuted? Yeah, John's muted.
He does have access to his mic and camera, so I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll give him a minute and we'll go to Naomi with a VDOT update. We'll come back to John.
That sounds great. The Commonwealth Transportation Board, they met last month in March. They talked about some pretty interesting topics that might be helpful to tune in or check out the notes that was shared with Miles as well. They talked about the emergency response budget, which we're anticipating having overspent by $160 million during the snow operation. So right now the agency is looking to identify ways to reduce costs. Also had a conversation on smart scale, so that might be interesting to check out as well. They talked about what it's meant to accomplish, but concerns that they have currently on how it operates. So that was a very informative discussion that they had. Some things to keep in mind. I just want to say thanks to everyone for working with us on smart scale, getting your applications in on April 1st, asking us questions even down to the last minute. We were happy to help. We got 82 applications out of the 335 applications in the state. That gave us about 24% of the applications in the Richmond district. A lot of them were from studies that are ongoing with VDOT or local studies or reapplies. So we're really happy with what was submitted for that cycle. So thank you all. We shared with Miles some of these one-pagers we put together, giving your smart scale update, a fall line trail update, as well as SYIP update. The 6-year improvement plan engagement opportunities are coming up, so please attend. You can attend any session. It doesn't have to be in your district to give feedback. And then I think I have one more, just a training update I want to share. So there's a local assistance training opportunity April 22nd from 9 a.m. to noon. That is on project management milestones, 60% plan review, and that's at the Richmond district office. Let me know if anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Naomi. Always like those trainings. So let's see if we can find John O'Keefe for an update from Ride Finders.
Thank you,
Hi,
Madam
John.
Chair. Hey, how are you today?
Good, thank you.
Good. I'll be brief. I know we're kind of long today, but Ride Finders, as always, has been busy out in the community. We've participated in multiple events like the Radio 1 Family Expo at Chesterfield Town Center, the GRTC Benchtop Brewery Tap event, the Richmond Tri-Cities Socioeconomic Data Development Process inaugural meeting on March 23rd. We're continuing our coordination with GRTC's procurement department on our Vanpool RFQ process. Also wanted to provide an update on our Tri-Cities Carpool and Vanpool incentive program. This program is a rewards eligible for commuters in the Tri-Cities region whose commutes of vanpools or carpools originate in those areas. We're trying to keep people from driving alone and get them to vanpool and carpool. They can earn up to $150 by registering for the program, and recording their commute trips through the Connecting VA platform during this program period. So far, we've had 59 participants signed up for the program since its launch on December the 1st. In March alone, we've recorded 90 van pool trips and 60 carpool trips. Also in March, we reduced the vehicle miles traveled for 7,900 for carpool and 1,209 reduced for a van pool. The money saved for van pool has been a little over $5,700 and for carpooling $877. And we've had 2 participants complete the program requirements of the 30 round trip van pool or carpool trips during the 90-day period. So just kind of wanted to let everybody know about that. We've also received notification from the Richmond chapter of Public Society Relations of America that we had 3 award entries that are finalists for an upcoming awards event later this month. And last but not least, the Ride Finders participated in the GRTC Volunteer Time Off program. We worked with Fit for Kids, and we did a fruit and veggie week during March 26th, where we handed out fruits and vegetables to the students at Miles Jones Elementary. And, you know, that was a good event. I appreciate GRTC giving us that opportunity to be out in the community and help with local nonprofits. And with that, Madam Chair, that's my report. Be glad to answer any questions anybody may have.
Thank you for all your good work.
Yes,
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
And so it looks like I just wanted to make sure everybody was following along the information that was shared in the chat, because I have not been doing a very good job of relaying that to you all. So Naomi was talking about getting some information out on revenue sharing by the April CTB meeting, but that should be the date listed, made available in the CTB meeting next week, she says. And so I just want to share that before we move on. Of course, I gave you some comments on the policy board updating their bylaws to include CVTA and Port of Richmond. And hopefully we will get someone from Port of Richmond to join our meetings in the future. Any TAC member comments that you would like to share at this time? Any members?
Just welcome to Chet. Happy to have you join us.
Yeah. Thank you, Naomi. Any other comments or questions before we move on? And then we'll have some more information coming back to us in our May meeting. Our next meeting will be a little bit delayed because there will be that consultation group meeting for the 2050 long-range transportation plan that will begin at 9 in May. So our meeting will start at 9:15 on May the 12th. So we don't have to wait in a little holding room while that meeting is going on. So thank you for bearing with us while we worked that out last time. But if there's no further comments or concerns, we'll go ahead and adjourn. I hope everyone enjoys their day today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.